Welcome back to WD
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Brie Bertoluccini, Marketing Manager.
and Chris Mullen, Senior Marketing and Communications Coordinator at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Hey, Chris. I'm excited to be back with you again this month for our Museum Musings episode. This month, we have some exciting updates. We are excited to announce, keep saying excited, said it so many times.
Yeah, but we are excited.
Yeah, we are excited to announce we are expanding our operating calendar this summer. Starting Memorial Day, May 29th, 2023, the museum will be open every Monday through Labor Day, September 4th, 2023. Our open to the public schedule during this time will be Thursday through Monday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., with last entry at 4:30 p.m. Tickets for the expanded summer schedule will go on sale early May, so keep an eye out for that on our website.
No better way to fight a case of the Mondays than the Walt Disney Family Museum. We do really hope to see you this summer. In addition to our new Monday hours, we will continue to offer private group access for Wonder Wednesdays. If you don't know what those are, Wonder Wednesdays are a way for you and your group to enjoy private access to the museum galleries while it is closed to the public. If that interests you, learn more about this experience by heading to waltdisney.org/wonder-wednesdays.
Also coming this summer is a new special exhibition, so stay tuned for that upcoming announcement.
Might you say that we're excited for it?
We are very, very excited for this one. I think our audience will be pretty stoked. I'm trying not to say any puns here because that will give it away. So
Yes, no spoilers.
no spoilers, keeping it really neutral.
Well, here's something that we can talk about. Speaking of exhibitions, we recently announced our next lower lobby exhibition, Pencils and Passion, a student art exhibition. This exhibition is a celebration of the museum's educational initiatives and the achievements of its students. Pencils and Passions is the 37th original exhibition produced by the museum. It highlights both past and present student artwork, recognizes the accomplishments of its alumni, and chronicles the development of the Walt Disney Family Museum Animation Academy.
Many of the artists featured in this exhibition began their careers from a young age at the Walt Disney Family Museum and continued their enrollment in museum classes and workshops as they and their art matured. Some of the students represented in Pencils and Passion have since been accepted to and studied at notable art and film schools, including New York University, Cal Arts, Ringling College, USC, San Jose State University, and UC Santa Cruz, while other students are now successfully pursuing careers in art and animation at companies including the Walt Disney Company, Netflix, Illumination Entertainment, DreamWorks Pictures, and Warner Brothers Television and Feature Films.
This unique exhibition is co-curated by studio manager Anita Meza, studio coordinator Grace LaQuesta, and director of education Travis Lucina, with director of collections and exhibitions Marina Villar Delgado. Pencils and Passion, a student art exhibition, will be on view beginning Thursday, May 11th, 2023, and will be open free to the public.
I'm very excited to see that exhibition. That will be a really wonderful celebration of student artwork. Well, join us this month in celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month with a special month-long screening of the critically acclaimed animated feature film from Disney and Pixar, Turning Red. With her best friends at her side, Mei Lee is an average Chinese-Canadian preteen dealing with the weight of her parents' expectations, middle school life, and boy band adoration when she discovers her family's magical secret. If she gets too emotional, she might poof into a giant red panda. Film screenings are available most Saturdays and Sundays in our theater, so see our calendar for times and exceptions.
In conjunction with our film screening, join us on May 7th in person in our theater as author and friend of the podcast Natasha Yim reads her new book, Disney Pixar Turning Red, Like Mother, Like Daughter, based on the Academy Award-nominated Disney Pixar movie Turning Red. Tickets are free, so register your spot by visiting our calendar on our website.
Get creative this summer with the return of our very popular summer classes. We have classes ranging from grades 3 to 12. The classes offered are digital animation, rubber hose, character design, anthropomorphic characters, from sketch to screen, FX animation, world building, multiplane animation, stop motion and fabrication, drawing fundamentals, infrastructure and perspective, and the heroine's journey. If you have a student in the Bay Area interested in art or animation this summer, visit our website to learn more.
Those spots are filling up fast, so check them out as soon as you can. And without further ado, it is now time for our Collections Clash. Each month, we square off with some of our favorite objects from the museum, and you, the audience, get to vote on your favorite. Before we get started, let's see where the audience came down on last month's Collections Clash, where the topic was awards. First round was between my pick of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, that received 14% of the vote, and your pick, Bree, of the Special Academy Award for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that received 86% of the votes. Not very patriotic of our listeners, in my opinion.
Well, for round two, it was between your pick of the Seed Award that received 20% of the votes and my pick of Lillian Disney's Academy Award bracelet that received 80% of the votes.
You picked the crowd favorite for sure. For the final round, it was between my pick of the greatest single contribution to the sport of racing pigeons that received 32% of the votes, and your pick of the Showman of the Year award that won the round with 68% of the votes. People liked racing pigeons more than presidential medals and burnt turkeys. Go figure. Congrats, Brie, on your win.
Well, thank you, Chris. This month's Collections Clash will be no small feat. The topic for this month is miniatures. I like to call it Miniature May.
Miniature May and Fetch, they are going to happen.
Yeah. Well, this month marks the 86th anniversary of the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge. Walt Disney found his love for miniatures here in San Francisco, the 1939 Golden Gate International Exposition. This would be the first time Walt or the Walt Disney Studios would contribute to a World's Fair. Notably, though, Walt's father Elias worked as a carpenter for the 1893 Columbian Exhibition in Chicago, that would later be referred to as a World's Fair.
The 1939 Golden Gate Exposition was held on Treasure Island. It was here that Narcissa Thorne had her famous exhibit of miniatures on display. Using miniature furnishings and accessories gathered by her uncle during his world travels, Narcissa Thorne created exquisite rooms decorated to represent European and American interiors of different eras. It was said that the rooms were so perfectly crafted that viewing them was like becoming miniaturized and entering another time. Needless to say, they captured Walt's imagination completely.
Walt's love of miniatures grew after this trip, and he began creating his very own and acquiring a collection. This collection was housed next to his office at the studios. In the mid 1960s, Walt's collection was inventoried with more than 1,000 items, including paintings, books that included the Holy Bible, Tennyson's poetical works, the Quran, and a miniature history of England. There were musical instruments such as three banjos, a mandolin, and an organ that was crafted by conductor Frederick Stark. There was a set of dueling pistols that we have on display with the case inscribed "The Colt Story in Miniature." There were 11 classic cars, a miniature battleship, a steamboat, and the miniatures we have on display are only a fraction of Walt's collection.
It'd be cool if we had a little miniature Steve Martin that could play the little miniature banjo, but I digress. Collecting these tiny treasures wasn't enough for Walt. He wanted to create an entire miniature world. In the early 1950s, he asked animator Ken Anderson to draw 24 scenes of life in an old western town. Walt planned to carve tiny figures and build the scenes in miniature. When he had made enough, he would send them out as a traveling exhibit. Walt spent countless hours carefully constructing the first of his tiny tableaus. The first scene, entitled Granny Kincaid's Cabin, was based on a set from his live action feature So Dear to My Heart. The cabin was exhibited at the Festival of California Living at the Pan Pacific Auditorium in Los Angeles from November 28th to December 7th, 1952. A press release announced that it represented the beginning of Walt's new miniature Americana exhibit entitled Disneylandia. You can see Granny Kincaid's Cabin that Walt constructed on display in Walt Disney Presents, an exhibition previously named One Man's Dream, at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World Resort in Florida.
While the traveling miniatures exhibit proved to be too costly, the idea sprouted into what eventually became Disneyland. There's one special attraction that, according to Ken Anderson, was, quote, one of Walt's favorite rides, Canal Boats of the World, now known as Storybook Land Canal Boats. This attraction features miniature scenes from fictional places drawn from fairy tale stories. Each structure was built with the same meticulous attention to detail that Walt lavished on his own miniatures. For Walt, good things did indeed come in small packages.
Well, with that, let's get into this month's Collections Clash. Bree, since you won last month, you go first.
For my first pick, I'm going with the special pink bed we have on display. This bed in particular has just a really sweet story that I just love. The linens on the bed stand out light pink with orange and yellow and white flowers behind green and darker pink circles making up the design. According to Diane Disney Miller, her father, Walt, created this bedspread and pillow set from doll clothes that she owned. The meticulous design of the set is what I particularly love. The bedspread has hand sewn hems on all the edges, and the pillow coverings on the open side have frayed edges. The fraying of these edges would have been hand done, and from my own experience fraying edges, it's a very meticulous job. Now, we can't say for sure how Walt put this together, but it is fun to kind of imagine how he sourced the fabric from his daughter and sewed this miniature together thoroughly to create this bed. This bed, amongst other miniatures in our collection, were recently loaned for the Met exhibition, inspiring Walt Disney, the animation of French decorative arts.
Great pick, Bree. Obviously, the miniatures that Walt actually had a hand in designing, fabricating, creating are just a little bit extra special. But with my first pick, I'm going to go with what else? The Lily Bell.
That's a good one. I should have taken it, but I've taken it before, so it's all yours.
Sorry, bedspread. Named after Walt's wife Lillian, the Lily Bell is a 1/8 scale model of an actual steam engine train. By comparison, the Disneyland Railroad is 5/8 scale. The train was built by Walt himself and ran around a half-mile track encircling his Holmby Hills home. Many animators, friends, and notable people have ridden this train, including artist Salvador Dali. In the Lily Bell, Walt got to combine two of his loves, miniatures and trains. Walt actually designed and furnished the entire caboose himself. Here's a quote from Walt in Railroad magazine about the process of putting his train together. Quote, after serving an apprenticeship in a machine shop, I studied metalwork and carpentry before I figured I was ready to start building. Then I built a train to 1/8 scale. The engine and the tender combined was 7 feet long and operated on coal and water, like the ones I had known as a news butcher. I fashioned all the cars myself. The box cars were big enough for a person to straddle, and the flat cars could seat two. My special pride was the caboose, which I furnished entirely in miniature right down to the potbelly stove. The engine was designed after one that had run on the old Central Pacific, so I named my little railroad the CP for Carrollwood Pacific, the street I lived on. End quote. I could go more into detail about the Lily Bell, but there's an incredible picture of Salvador Dali riding the Lily Bell that's truly worth 1,000 words.
Well, that's such a great pick, and I always love the story of Walt designing the caboose. We had the caboose on display a few years back for our Home for the Holidays exhibition, and it was just a real treat to be able to see the magnificent detail that went into that interior of the car, having the top open and you can just peer down. So that was just really awesome. Well, since we do the snake style draft, you get the next pick for round two.
Well, and it's perfect because for my second pick, I'm doing it as kind of a continuation of my first round pick. I'm choosing Walt's potbelly stoves, which really symbolize a full circle moment for Walt's hobby of miniature building and collecting. Or should I say a grand circle tour moment? Returning to my previous pick, when Walt created his Carrollwood Pacific Railroad and assembled his Lily Bell locomotive, he furnished the entirety of the caboose, including one of its main attractions, a potbelly stove. Quote, I had a pattern made up, and it turned out so cute with the grate, shaker, and door, and all the little working parts, I became intrigued with the idea, Walt wrote. I had a few made up. One was bronze, another black, and I even made a gold one. Then we made more and started painting them in motifs that fitted the period at the turn of the century, end quote. Each of these 5.5-inch tall stoves had a different design, and eventually about 100 were made. Walt gave some to friends and even sent some to an antique gift shop in New York where, to Walt's delight, Narcissa Thorne herself purchased two to add to her renowned collection, the same collection that had originally inspired Walt's hobby. They sold for $25 each, and Walt made no special effort to market them or make a profit. He was just curious to see if there was any interest, and by 1957, the supply was depleted. Quote, it has been fun making them, and others appreciate them too. So, all in all, I feel well repaid, said Walt.
That's such a great pick. I am like really jealous that you got to pick that. That was going to be my next pick. But I just love the idea that there are people out there that purchase these pot-bellied stoves and never knew that Walt Disney himself created them. I just think that's so cool. Well, for my second pick, I'm going with the Main Street USA facade models on display in Gallery 9. Now, these are miniature models of Main Street that were used to bring to life the blueprint drawings of the elevation for each building on Main Street. Oftentimes, architects will create models to better envision how the design will look in 3D. Today, we actually do something similar, but with advanced technology. Our director of exhibitions and collections, Marina Villar Delgado, uses 3D technology to design our exhibitions, which give a similar feel to a model where you can actually walk through these 3D renderings. So, before guests could walk down Main Street, these models helped Imagineers envision how Walt's dream of a turn of the century boulevard would come to life. On display, we have the models for the Crystal Palace, Penny Arcade, Ice Cream Parlor, the Emporium, Camera Shop, the Leather Goods, and Harper's Hardware Facade. I'm assuming as an ode to Imagineer Harper Goff. I don't think that ever came to fruition in the end, but it is cool to see. So these models are actually made from balsa wood, which is a really kind of lightweight, thin wood. And they've been hand painted by illustrator James F. Trout. So the windows all have a glare to them that's been painted on, and each brick has been hand drawn, and they just have incredible detail. And I just love the display in Gallery 9. So they're by all of our television displays. There's a nice little section where you can see, and it has the blueprints out. So kind of paired with the blueprint, it's really cool to see.
That is a really great pick. I do think it must have been a reference to Harper Goff, considering that Harper Goff did so much work on Main Street USA, taking inspiration from his own Fort Collins, Colorado, in kind of the shaping of that turn of the century town look. So I don't think you're far off on that.
Yeah, I don't want to be quoted on it, but it is, an educational guess here.
Yeah, of course. Not an authorized fact, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that model is particularly cool too. I mean, Disneyland also um, has another model in the Opera House, of kind of opening day Disneyland, where it kind of shows just how triangular Disneyland originally was. Obviously, before all the expansions, before 1959 with the monorail, Matterhorn, submarine voyage, obviously before Toontown, and obviously before Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, where you really get that aerial bird's eye view. So next time you're at the Opera House, keep an eye out for that model of Disneyland as well. And then, of course, there's no competing with our model of
No.
Disneyland in Gallery 9 as well. But that that's enough bragging on that point. Well, so in summary, great pick. And then as we do the snake style draft for round 3, you have the first pick. So go ahead.
Well, for my last pick, I'm taking us back to Gallery 1. So in Gallery 7 is where Walt's miniature collection resides, if you don't know the numbers of the galleries. But when you first walk into the museum is where you can find a miniature photo book of notable attractions in Paris, France. So this is amongst other treasures Walt picked up during his time volunteering for the American Red Cross during World War I. This mini photo book consists of 8 black and white photos, including, okay, these are in French a little bit. I tried to make them into English, but I do not speak French, so please don't come for me. Arc Day, these are just awful.
It's okay. Well, let's work through it together. This isn't a French program. This is an English language program. So
I all of a sudden got really self-conscious. Okay. Arc de Triomphe.
Triomphe.
Triomphe. Okay, there we go. The Basilica of the Sacred Heart of Paris. Notre Dame. Know that one. The Eiffel Tower. Okay. Um, the Grand des Roues. Les Invalides. I'm so sorry to anybody who speaks French.
You're almost there.
Monument à la République. And the Pantheon.
Woo!
I'm so sorry. But they are really beautiful black and white photos of each of these landmarks. Miniature picture books were really popular in the 18th and 19th centuries and were often used as souvenirs and collectibles. So this book, when Walt would have picked it up, would have fit perfectly in his pocket. We have other miniature photo books in our collection. One is a collection of landmarks, similar to the one that we have of Paris, but one for London, England. And we actually have one from the 1902 coronation of King Edward VII to the English throne. That includes portraits of the royal family, so that's something kind of unique. So the Paris photo book was actually found by Walt's grandson and co-founder of the Walt Disney Family Museum, Walter Miller. located in Walt's valet box. Here's a quote featured in our galleries from Walter. Quote, "When I was 12 or 13 years old, my Granny Lily gifted me a valet box that belonged to my grandpa. Underneath the top shelf of this box were all sorts of personal items that he held onto over the years, mementos from his life that he must have cherished. There was a small, weathered old bag that had many small items in it that appeared to be full of mementos from the time he spent in France with the Red Cross." End quote. So, as a guest traveling through the museum, this story comes full circle when you actually get to see the valet box mentioned in this story down in Gallery 9. So, here's a quote from Diane Disney Miller about the discovery. Quote, "I was very aware of that same valet box with the fox head. As a child, I would open it and view its contents, odd cufflinks, pins, etc. Never did I look beneath the top shelf. I was not at all aware of the scrubby little bag of Dad's was collected during this very important experience during his 17th year and kept all his life." So I just love this little memento that we have on display, a little miniature photo book that we have that he kept from his time in France and kept all throughout his life that made it into our museum. I just love those special mementos that we have on display.
Yeah, and considering that, we can't say if Walt had seen many other miniatures earlier on in his life or had at least recognized it as an interest that he would have up until the Golden Gate International Exposition, it's cool that we could reach this far back into Walt's life and have a miniatures example. So, not to make your case for you, but that is a great pick.
Thanks, Chris.
With my third round pick, I bid a fond farewell, or bon voyage, to Walt's interest in trains and dive deep into another way his work intersected with his love of miniatures: Walt's collection of miniature volumes of Shakespeare. William Shakespeare and Walt Disney are known for being amongst the greatest storytellers of their eras, so it makes sense that Walt would want to include volumes of Shakespeare in his collection. As far as I recall, Walt didn't directly adapt any Shakespearean works, but there are at least a couple of Shakespearean references in Walt's films. In Trick or Treat in 1952, the Donald Duck Halloween cartoon, the witch quotes to Walt's nephews the "double bubble, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble" passage from Macbeth, and follows by reiterating, "This is the real thing, right out of Shakespeare." Her broomstick is named Beelzebub, another Macbeth reference. In The Absent-Minded Professor, Professor Shelby Ashton, portrayed by Elliot Reed, quotes from Hamlet, quote, "As the bard says, that he's mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity, and pity 'tis true." When he's told flatly to shut up by Betsy, he remarks, quote, "Well, if that's what she thinks of Shakespeare." So, not directly, full stories, but obviously there was some reference, some acknowledgement of the power of Shakespeare's stories, even all the way into the 1950s and 60s.
Well, I learned something new. I love that. And just these collection of books that Walt gifted to his daughter, Diane. Walt obviously loved these stories enough that he thought it would make a perfect gift. So I love all these Shakespeare connections. I know it wasn't within Walt's lifetime, but I love The Lion King. And that, I believe, is it a Hamlet reference or
Mhm.
recreation? Yeah.
And the different ways that like holding the skull has continued to pop up in various media as this kind of iconic image from a Shakespeare story.
Yes, definitely. Wow, this was such a great round of collections clash, Chris, and it's always so hard to just pick three objects. I know both you and I have a full list every time we come to the table to only pick three objects. So now it's time for our honorable mentions. These objects featured are for our audience's enjoyment only and will not be up for voting. So my first pick is something I know many of us own, but Walt had a miniature collection of miniature mugs. This collection is on display in a little curio cabinet that is a perfect size for this collection. On each shelf, there are hand painted mugs that feature a steamboat, horse drawn carriage, bald eagle, an American flag, one with just a snazzy smile. And one of my favorites in the collection showcases the owner of the collection, the mug with the initials WD, short for Walt Disney.
Hey Bree, if you take a picture of a mug, is that technically a mug shot?
Did it?
My first honorable mention is the Pinocchio maquette we have on display in Gallery 5. A maquette is a small scale sculpture, often used to finalize the concept of a design. This Pinocchio maquette was created by the Walt Disney Studios Character Model Department during the production of Pinocchio. The Character Model Department, led by Joe Grant, was established at Walt's suggestion in October 1937 and played an integral role in developing new stories and characters. Designers and illustrators visualized their ideas through the use of drawing and painting materials, while sculptors created maquettes in plasticine, plaster, and clay. These three-dimensional models were used during the development of animated films to help animators visualize characters in different poses from any angle. I picked it as an honorable mention because while it is miniature in stature and certainly smaller than a full-size Pinocchio figure would be, it didn't quite fit the prompt or spirit of Miniature May.
Well, I love it nonetheless. And we did feature that particular maquette on an entire campaign that we had for Wish Upon a Star, the art of Pinocchio. So it definitely rings a bell all up here in the noggin. Well, my next honorable mention is a miniature Austrian wedding cupboard. Now, this wedding cupboard is so ornate and beautifully hand painted. It has two doors that open and it's just filled with linens. Mind you, this is a miniature, so it's small. It has a rosary bead necklace and yarn. There's a basket of flowers painted on the top of the cabinet and small details on the right and left hand corner that are the numbers 18 on the left hand side and then 15 on the right hand side. I'm just going to deduce here that this was in reference to the year 1815 for when the cabinet is meant to call back to. Mind you, this was a recreation. On the back in Austrian, it reads, which we've translated. I won't try to read in Austrian.
We already have experience with your French, so we're not going to recreate that for Austrian.
Well, it reads, quote, "This little chest, a special feature of our premier products, is not a toy, but a showcase display piece. It depicts an exact replication of an endowment chest, as the farmer's bride would be given for her marriage in the olden times, with linens, bedding, laden, as well as flax and wool. In the drawer are jewelry tins, prayer books, special bonnets, and various cloths. Underneath clothing, umbrella, and the money chest." So on further viewing, you can actually see it on display. You can actually see the little miniature money chest. It's extra small inside the cabinet. So this was actually also on loan for the Met for their exhibition inspiring Walt Disney, the animation of French decorative arts. So really cool.
My second honorable mention is the Mickey and Minnie Lionel handcar. Another honorable mention because it's a small item, so kind of miniature, and a way for folks to bring a miniature Mickey or Minnie into their homes, but not quite what Miniature May is about. In 1900, Joshua Lionel Cohen founded Lionel Manufacturing Company. The company was renamed the Lionel Corporation in 1918, and by the 1930s had become an innovator in toy train production. But the Great Depression took its toll, and on May 7, 1934, Lionel went into receivership to avoid bankruptcy. 2 months later, Disney merchandising genius Kay Kamen went to the Lionel Corporation with an idea: a Mickey and Minnie wind-up handcar. Kay Kamen believed in the company. The wind-up handcar was produced and became available in either red or green, running along a circular O-gauge track. Within 4 months, over 253,000 sets were sold. By December 31st, 1934, Lionel paid its debts in full and the company left receivership the following month. That $1 toy was credited with saving the company. According to historian Jim Korkis, quote, "It was not just the sale of the Mickey Mouse handcar, but the fact that the company was associated with Mickey Mouse that made the rest of its products and the company itself popular," end quote. Lionel would later partner with us to present our 2014 to 2015 special exhibition, All Aboard: Celebration of Walt's Trains.
Well, you finally got all three. I feel like a lot of the three big train miniatures that we have on display in our museum. It was a very train-centric episode.
People love their trains. Walt loved trains. I don't know if you heard.
And miniatures.
And
yeah,
miniatures.
So it's a perfect combination there. I love it. Well, for my last honorable mention, I'm going with one of my favorite things that was immortalized in miniature form in the cutest way on our Disneyland model. Now, if you go to the parks with me, I always ask anybody who's with me, what is the oldest thing at Disneyland? And the oldest thing at Disneyland, and therefore in our museum, is the petrified tree. Well, the model makers at Kerner Optical got the smallest of details represented on our model, and the petrified tree was no exception. I love looking at this, trying to spot this little guy on our model in Frontierland. The tree at Disneyland was a gift from Lillian Disney in September 1957. It was a re-gift of sorts. The legend has it that Walt gifted it to Lillian for their anniversary. It's from the Pike Petrified Forest in Colorado. It weighs 5 tons and measures 7.5 feet in diameter. This petrified tree is estimated to have been 200 feet tall and been part of the subtropical forest 55 to 70 million years ago in what is now Colorado. So opals were actually formed inside the tree trunk, and I've honestly been really obsessed with what happened to these opals. I've asked around, but I'm actually not even sure if the opals were ever removed. So maybe they're still inside the tree trunk. But if you have any information on the opals, please let me know.
Podcast at wdfmuseum.org. Email with a quickness because Bree needs to know.
I mean, look, I've been doing my due diligence, so I've asked a lot of people about these opals. I said it was part of the legend, and that's because, as most know, Walt was a consummate gag man and loved telling a good story. Walt and Lillian did stop at Pike's Petrified Forest in 1956, 2 days shy of their 31st wedding anniversary. Walt took a tour while Lillian waited in the car. Walt purchased the anniversary present for $1,650. So, along with this anniversary present gag, it was later rumored that Lillian tolerated the stump at their Carrollwood home for a whole year before donating it to Disneyland. However, it never made it to their home. It was meant for Disneyland all along. While an early handwritten draft of the tree's plaque did include the faux quip, quote, "too large for the mantle," the letter Walt drafted to John Baker, proprietor of Pike's Forest, read, quote, "It is my understanding that you will deliver the stump direct to Disneyland at Anaheim, California within 30 days, end quote. It did take longer than 30 days, but the stump did eventually find its way to Disneyland.
I hate it when my petrified tree stump is late for delivery. It happens all
I
the
know.
time. Can't quite get it on the back of that Amazon truck. For my last honorable mention, I'm going to follow your lead and pick something off of the Disneyland model. It's a small world. The Disneyland model is small in scale, which means the It's a Small World is also, you guessed it, small. In other words, it's a small world on a small world.
Oh my gosh. Need you say more, Chris?
I could, but you wouldn't want me to. We got to wrap up this episode. That mercifully brings us to the end of our Miniature May Collections Clash. Visit our Instagram stories today, May 3rd, to vote on your favorite objects, or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes or share everything you know about the opals inside the petrified tree.
Well, thank you for tuning in to WDFM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
That's enough small talk for today. Keep moving forward.
Bye.
Bye.